Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan and I love humanity. I've always wondered whether humanity was just a manifestation of our universe's mysterious desire and need to constantly create things. Or perhaps the universe just created humanity so that it could better experience itself in all of its majesty and glory. No matter what the reason is, I am glad that we are here. I'm what you might call a human supremacist. I think despite all of our flaws and all of our weaknesses that humanity is the best species out there. It's quite obvious in our own local solar system that humanity reigns supreme, but even in the wider Star Wars galaxy, we seem to just be everywhere. Take Coruscant, for instance. We've talked about this world several times in our recent videos. The planet is known to have a population of around 1 to 2 trillion living beings and represents a good portion of the galaxy's entire population. But did you know that roughly 78% of that 1 to 2 trillion number is actually human lives? And then if we go to other planets in the core regions of the galaxy like Alderaan, we find a similar breakdown in the population. You have 2 billion people in total, 95% of them are human. Then you have Corellia, which has a 3 billion population in total with 60% humans. And it's not just there, mind you. Even if you go out to the edges of the galaxy, to the outer rim, like Tatooine, you'll still find settlements of human moisture farmers. If you go to the spice mines of Kessel, you'll still find human slaves. And even if you go into the even more chaotic and remote areas of the galaxy, like the Unknown Region, you'll still run into groups of near-human species like the Chiss, who only have some minor genetic differences from the human species. In this video, I really want to talk about two main things. One is the characteristics and personality traits that humans generally have that have allowed them as a species to dominate the galaxy. And two, the interesting series of events that basically allowed humanity to get this opportunity in the first place. It's an interesting story that will give you more insight about the unquenchable power of the human spirit. And perhaps we might all just learn a little bit more about ourselves during the experience. Before we continue, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video, Star Trek Fleet Command, a free-to-play 4X MMO game set in a galaxy much closer to home. Ever want to take a shot at running your own ship, maybe your own fleet? Or even starbase? Well, become a starbase commander at the edge of civilized space in Star Trek Fleet Command, and create a faction using a huge list of existing Star Trek characters and ships, and join millions of players online across the world as you battle it out for new territory and discoveries. Star Trek Fleet Command is always updating its content, bringing new experiences and events to players, and right now it's Star Trek Fleet Command's 5th anniversary. There'll be festivities celebrating the community of players and also new contests and giveaways. If this sounds like something you guys are interested in, check out the QR code that's on screen right now for more information, or take a look at the link in the description down below. Plus, if you guys use our promo code WARSPEED, that's all caps, on their official website, StarTrekFleetCommand.com, you can get a content pack for free with 10 epic shards of Kirk. Thank you for your patience. On to the rest of the video. So where do humans come from in the Star Wars galaxy? Well, most of the lore seems to point towards one planet smack in the middle of the core, Notron. That's basically the old world name of the planet that is now known as Coruscant. Hundreds of thousands of years before the Clone Wars had started, thousands of years before the Republic, the Jedi and Sith even existed, Notron was just a relatively normal planet at the time. It wasn't completely covered in Duracrete, it wasn't completely overpopulated, it wasn't the center of some galaxy-wide empire or republic. It was just a simple planet with two main species. First, we have the Twang. They were a species who had a warrior culture, averaging around 2 meters in height. They trained from youth to honor the gods through combat. Then we have the second species known as the Zell. They're a bit smaller than the Twang, a little less warlike, and a lot more social and mercantile. They've established 13 different nations across the planet of Notron, and they're widely considered the predecessors of the human race. Now, individually, each one of the Zell nations were no match for the powerful Twang warriors, who were united and had brilliant tacticians, but together, the Zell would form the battalions of Zell and wage a brutal campaign against the Twang for dominance over the planet. The Twang would eventually be overwhelmed and lose, and flee to the peripherals of the galaxy, where they would one day form the Mandalorian culture, which ironically thousands of years later would be completely taken over by human beings or descendants of the Zell. The Twang would become extinct, and humanity proves that it will always win in the long run. So how did ancient Zell get to modern day humanity on Coruscant? Well, not a lot is known about this period of time in Star Wars history. We do know that the Twang and the Zell fought around 200,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, and we really don't hear anything about Notron until about 100,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. That's when a species known as the Kalami fly by the planet. They're relatively advanced, and they observed that the Zell, or the humans on the planet, were still pretty primitive, and they decided not to communicate with them. It was only roughly around 90,000 BBY, or 10,000 years later, that Notron ran out of land and started building vertically and transformed the planet into the ecumenopolis that we all know now as Coruscant. It was really around this time that Coruscant and the human population on Coruscant would explode, and it would do this for about 50,000 years. Relatively uninterrupted. But then the enlightened species known as the Kwa made a grave mistake and gifted a violent species known as the Rakatans with the knowledge of the Force and many other advanced technologies. This allowed the Rakatans to rise up from their primitive ways and reach their full potential as a race of bloodthirsty, conquering savages. The Rakatan Infinite Empire was born, and it was unstoppable. They would even destroy the Kwa, who had uplifted them out of their primitive ways. And by 30,000 BBY, their forces had stumbled across the planet of Notron. It is unknown if there was a huge battle fought or if the humans just simply gave up. I imagine they didn't just give up, but what ends up happening is Notron Coruscant falls to the Rakatans, and all the human beings on the planet are enslaved. Now, humans individually are not very impressive creatures, especially when you compare them to the diverse collection of aliens that one can find in the Star Wars galaxy. Humans only have 2 arms and 2 legs. They don't have the extra limbs and strength of a basilisk. And even if we did, our brains just lack the control and coordination of Ardanian to control those extra limbs. Humans, actually on the wider spectrum of life in the galaxy, are kind of slow. The reaction times are not very impressive, which is why it's amazing that Anakin was able to win the Boot Naive Classic. He was actually the only human who could even fly a pod racer without getting themselves killed. Humans also can't breathe underwater like the Mon Calamari or Corns. They can't survive in extremely hot environments like the Mustafarians, and they can't handle extreme cold either like Atals can. Humans don't have long enough of a lifespan to ever truly become wise like Yoda's species or even the Wookiees. Humans can't see in infrared like the Trandoshans. They didn't utilize echolocation like a Togruta can. They didn't have a keen sense of smell, vision, or hearing. And humans, unlike the pureblood Sith or Morallans, did not have an increased chance of developing Force sensitivity. Upon first glance, human beings are terribly weak. But the reality is, humans have never been individually powerful. A naked human is basically useless by itself. What really makes humans powerful is the understanding of one's own weakness and the tenacious desire for one to improve their outlook in life. That is what makes humans truly formidable. Born without much capability, a human's greatest strength is its ability to overestimate their own ability and achieve things that they really have no right to achieve in the first place. That is the beauty of humanity. We are at the same time a very collective and collaborative species, but also a very uniquely selfish and individualistic society. These two traits might seem diametrically opposed to one another, but humanity is a very hypocritical species. A lot of the things we say and do conflict each other and simply don't make sense.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Which itself is an absolute thing to say. Now, the Rakatans probably didn't pay much attention to the human spirit when they conquered us. They probably just saw us as another slave stock that they could use for their empire. The Rakatans were kind of this military-oriented society, not that different from the Romans, and so they were quite practical in how they viewed things. And so what they were after, first and foremost, was efficiency. And humans kind of fit their needs quite well. We weren't overly aggressive creatures. We worked well in groups. We were smart enough, but also strong enough to perform a wide range of tasks. Compared to the other species, it's relatively easy to breed humans and make more of us as well. And sometimes when there's no one around, humans will even try to mate with inanimate objects, or try to breed with their siblings, even if it is bad genetically speaking for their species. Now, if we take a look at the Star Wars galaxy, you'll notice that there isn't just a planet full of humans, a planet full of Duros, a planet full of Zabroks, and so on. Most planets have several different species living on it, and every one of those species seem to have some type of ownership to the planet and have been there for quite some time. As a matter of fact, on most planets, what species you are doesn't really matter as much as your connection to the planet, which is why it's easy to see distinctly different groups of humans humans with completely different and unrelated cultures on multiple planets across the galaxy. How did this happen? Well, you could thank the Rakatans. When they began to expand their infinite empire, they brought with them their slaves everywhere they went. The Rakatans actually didn't care what the local population's makeup was. They just wanted laborers to work for them, and they found a lot of humans on Notron, and they started spreading these humans everywhere. Now, around 25,200 BBY, the Rakatan Empire experienced an extremely swift downfall thanks to the appearance of a mysterious plague that severed the Rakatans from the Force. And seeing as most of their technology was also powered by the Force, overnight the Rakatans lost access to their communications, transport, weapons, and factories. Soon, the slaves of the Rakatan Infinite Empire started overthrowing their masters, and within a generation, the Rakatan Infinite Empire completely collapsed and then disappeared. A new civilization would arise, the Republic, and at its core was Coruscant, a planet-wide city built and run primarily by a human culture. And so it was the humans from nearby Corellia who would first reverse engineer the Rakatan hyperdrives. This would lead to further forays into the peripherals of the galaxy, and it would mainly be human explorers from the core regions who would colonize nearby worlds that would be central to the Republic's expansion. Now, I'll admit, a good percentage of humanity is pretty stupid. A good percentage of humanity doesn't really have independent thought. They just follow others. But there have always been a sizable minority of humans who just naturally know how to hustle and how to explore. Whereas older species like the Celestials or Qua were perhaps too wise to try to continue to grow and build things and only really wanted peace and stability, the humans were more than eager to try. They would build a republic, one of the longest lasting and greatest governments ever created in Star Wars history. Unlike the Rakatans, who were xenophobic and oppressed lesser species, humanity decided to rule the galaxy not as human conquerors or victors, but as just another member of the galactic community. Humanity gave up power willingly, believing that rule by committee democracy would unite the various species instead of push them apart. And I would argue that the Republic, the humans, were right for the most part. Perhaps it's because humanity has always numbered in the trillions that humans have no fear of losing power. Instead of being afraid, humanity's curiosity of the wider galaxy won out. We saw other species as not enemies, but potential partners and even teachers that we can learn from. It's for this reason that humanity, when they created the Republic, guaranteed human rights for all sentient species, not just humans. Humans, despite having many different belief systems, only have one true shared universal belief, and that was the belief in the mighty credit. And that's something that humanity introduced to the rest of the galaxy. And so instead of organizing the Republic around a system of beliefs or some type of god, they organized it around the credit, around the free markets, one of the most powerful forces in the entire galaxy. Ultimately, I think it is humanity's physical weakness that makes us great. Lacking the tools to naturally survive, our minds have always provided us with the tools and vehicles we needed to survive. Adaptability has always been one of the most important traits of humanity, and it's because of our ingenuity that life can spread to every corner of the galaxy, even to the harshest environments. Take the Chiss, for instance. We talked about them just earlier. They clearly once were all humans, but sometime long ago they managed to adapt to a completely iced-over planet, and even develop blue skin and red eyes as a result. Or look at the Zabrak. You might think the horns on top of their heads are impressive, but what's far more impressive is their two hearts, which allows them to oxygenate their bodies much quicker and gives them increased stamina. Or take a look at the Umbarans, who most likely were descendants of human travelers who got stuck on the planet of Umbar, who itself was trapped within the Ghost Nebula. The Umbarans have pale skin and colorless eyes, which allows them to see in the ultraviolet spectrum, which is very useful on a planet with very little visible light. These near-human species are a great example of the extreme lengths that human beings are willing to go in order to survive. We are one tenacious species, and if you've learned anything from this video, it's that not all humans are remarkable. Not all humans played a part in making sure that our species would dominate the Star Wars galaxy, but the individuals who did matter, who did play a part. The thing that really made them different is that they simply tried to do something with their life. And so here's to all those humans who didn't stay home on the moisture farm. Here's to all the humans who pursued their dreams and made our humble species into the greatest the galaxy has ever seen.